start? Okay. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I will ask everyone to join his seat because we're about to start. It would be good also to join the front seats. Do not hesitate. Thank you. So, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, for this side event on the long-term low-emission development strategies. When we're talking about the LEDs, we're talking about the future. So during this 1 hour, we're going to look into the future. But it is also a future rooted in the present because many countries, African countries, are facing challenges, and this is something very present. And this is why we are here also to share the first findings of the landscape study, LEDS landscape study. And we are also going to have some countries sharing their experiences. During 1 hour, we'll have 3 main times. The first time will be on the introductory remarks. Then we'll be going deep in dive the substance. And we'll have for that the presentation of the study. And after that, we'll have the panel, countries sharing the experience on the LEDS journey, and ending with the closing remarks. And because we don't have much time, without further ado, I would like to welcome here for the welcoming remark, Dr. George from Agnes. Dr. George is Dr. George Wamukoya. Is the group leader for African Group of Negotiator Expert Support, Agnes Africa. So I would like, yes, welcome him, please, a round of applause. Thank you.
How are you, colleagues? I know you must be tired, but for the remaining few minutes, please, let's focus on this very important session, LEDs, which for us as a negotiator, I would like us to engage on. Why? Because when we are trying to look at setting the goals for the Paris Agreement, we requested countries to do intended nationally determined contributions. And each one of them was coming up with some years of whatever targets and the rest. And therefore, when now it was crystallized into Article 4 for national determined contribution and the cycle, but we needed to know where do we want to ultimately to be, so that countries can be able to know the progress they are making. And therefore, that long-term visioning, the LEDs, becomes very, very important. And it's on that basis that we're partnering with the UNFCCC and the RCCs and climate analytics and others to try and understand why Africa, we have done very poorly in developing these long-term strategies. They are important because they give us the roadmap as to where we want to be, and then we use NDCs to get there. And so this is going to be a platform where we're going to share with you some ideas that are emerging from the interaction from the countries. The countries themselves will be speaking about it, and based on that, then we'll be able to see how do we work with countries to ensure that before 2025, before they submit their second generation NDCs, at least they have that long-term vision that through which then they can be realized through NDCs. So we are very, very thankful to our colleagues from the UNFCCC family and our colleagues from Climate Analytics who are helping us to do this work. So welcome, and we look forward to your fruitful contributions. Thank you.
Thank you, George. And I would like now to welcome Bernd Ackman, the team lead for NDC and LEDS sectoral support unit at the Mitigation Division, UNFCCC. A round of applause, please.
Thank you, Mark, and welcome everyone. We are very glad to be here with you. I'm personally very glad that I finally again follow up with George on stage. We have a long history together. Back in Durban, we were negotiating, or I was supporting, helping him with the text on agriculture, which became more and more important and is now one of the key elements on every agenda. So I'm glad to be here. And what George just mentioned is something I wanted to echo. The long-term low emission, and I think the D in this development strategies were one of the very first paragraphs back in Paris that was agreed by everyone. We carried it through the whole time because it is, I don't know if you read the Paris Agreement very carefully as we do, it's our job, but it's one of the very, very few times in the agreement that you have the word development. And adding the word development is very, very important because it's bringing together climate and development aspects. And George, you said we are doing very poorly here in the continent to develop these strategies. I think this is absolutely okay because in the Secretariat, we don't need another submission of a piece of paper. These long-term strategies are not mandatory. They are, as George also mentioned, a tool to guide the NDCs. They are a tool to reach out to investors, partners, others to say, this is where we go, and our NDCs lead us there. And first and foremost, they're a tool for each country, a tool to show where do we want to go, how do we bring all of this together. And in the Secretariat, we think once a country is ready with that, we are happy to receive it, we are happy to read it, we are happy to work with that. And to get there, I can only really commend our colleagues in the RCCs, commend George, commend all the partners to take this forward, slowly but steady, and work on building capacities, building understanding, and learning from each other, because it's also important that there is no template for long-term strategies, since it is different in every country. And what we are realizing when reading through them, we are wondering, where do you leave your adaptation section? Isn't that, or shouldn't that be part of your long-term development strategy? So be very thorough in doing that. Submit it to us. Once you do that, you can recall it any time, and you can just update it as you go along. So it is not like an NDC. It is not a commitment. It is more like an official document, and then when you have new information, you update it, and then there's a new official document. So don't be shy about that. Don't see it as a big obligation. Rather see it as an opportunity to tie all those different elements together in a way that it works for your country. And George, you mentioned the workshop. I think that was great, and I'm grateful for all colleagues, and that is what we do in the UNFCCC. We need to stick to protocol, so there were the RCCs, our regional collaboration centers involved, UNDP, AFCAP, GCAP, the NDC partnership, AGNES of course, IRENA, 2050 pathway platforms, and climate analytics. And we would like to thank each and every one for coming together and doing this together. And I'm looking forward to any follow-up from this. And well, you have our support in the Secretariat, and first and foremost at our regional collaboration centers here in Africa. So thank you, George, for making all this happen, and thanks, Mark, for having me.
Thank you, Bernd. I think that the key word is development. but development also coming with partnership and also country engagement. And this is why I think that now we are privileged to introduce Mr. Koku from Climate Analytics, who will, on behalf of Agnes, on behalf of Climate Analytics, and behalf of the RCCs, who will be now deep diving in the substantive of the landscape LEDS study. As said by Bernd and by Dr. George, LEDS is a journey, is the future, but it's also the present, but also a matter of opportunities. And so without further ado, I leave you the floor, George, for your presentation. Thank you. A round of applause, please.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Yes, my name is Koku from Benin. I'm working for Climate Analytics, and I will share with you the result of the work we have undertaken during the last 3 months with the support of Agnes. Thank you so much for trusting us. I will not spend a lot of time in trying to explain why we have undertaken this study, but I will just go to the methodology and also to the results. This is George and Bernd also talk about all this, but we as Climate Analytics, we see the LEDs as an opportunity for most developing countries, because when you go to the development, most African countries and most developing countries, we don't have long-term development strategies. And especially when it comes to the sectors, we don't have it. Sometimes we will see some countries having development strategies towards 2030 or even 2040, but these ones are just visions. They are not really development strategies. They are not sectorial visions. And it means that we are just trying each day to feed our country or our continent, but we need to sit down at some point and look at the future and see what are we going to do for the future generations. Then let me see, what we are trying to do is that for the moment we have 8 countries in Africa that have submitted the LEDs, and we are trying to understand why we have this poor demand about the elaboration, and how can we help other countries to achieve. The key issue here is how can we learn from each other. We are not blaming countries that have not yet developed the LEDs, but we are trying to see how we can learn and how we can push other countries to have this LEDs and take it as major opportunity to have a long-term development strategy. That is the key issues here. For that, we have the objective of the work. That was to establish the LED landscape in Africa. I will go, because I have just 15 minutes, and I'm a French guy, then I have to rush up at some states to deliver my message. I think I will go to the methods. To undertake this study, we have discussed with Agnes and the RCCs about the inception meeting and the point of view we have about the work. How do we see the work? And we agreed on this one, and later we developed a questionnaire to have some data from countries, especially from the focal points. During the COP, the SB50 at Bonn, we share with the focal points, all the 54 focal points from Africa, we share with them the online questionnaire so that they can fill it. Later, we have an online discussion also with some partners so that they can help us to reach out to the focal point, because these guys are very, very busy. Then it was not easy. Later, we also did, during the second phase, some review. Also, after the survey, we did also some review of the 8 LEDs available to see what can we learn from these 8 and how can we share this experience with other countries. At the end of the day, we came out with a report that we share with our partners, the RCCs and also the AGS, and all together we had a session on that, and we tried to improve the report, and now we are presenting some key results here, and we are hoping that from here we can get also some insights to improve the work before the final validation of the work. Now let me go to the responses. We have so far 31 countries that respond to our questionnaire. 31 countries. These countries are just colored in green here. For the West Africa, I think we have 12. We have done good. In Central Africa, we have 4/8. We are still looking for some countries to come and to join us. For the eastern and the southern part of the continent, we have 7 countries. But from the MENA region, we have just one. From one, we have the Tunisia. We are still hoping that we can reach to the other countries. Then we have 31/54. The results. So far, for the 31 countries that we interviewed, we have 5 that have finalized the LEDS and have submitted the final products on the website of the UNFCCC. We have 12 that are underway and 14 that have not yet started to elaborate the document. 14. We also have some regional breakout of our results because another aim of this study is to inform the action of the RCC in the future, to see how each RCC can undertake some action to help countries that are still lagging to join the other countries. Then when you look at it here, you can see that there is some few issues. Oh, let me go back. Okay, let me go back. Sorry. Okay, you can see that for Central Africa, there is still some work to do about Central Africa, also Eastern Africa and Western Africa. I think we still have some work to do. Now, when you come to the motivation, we also ask countries why do they undertake this elaboration. Most of the countries, they are undertaking the elaboration because they want to meet the international commitments. Also, they want to have a long-term planning framework. That is also something important for countries, because when you elaborate it, you have a long-term planning. That is something that can be good for your own development. When it comes to the challenges, I think the main challenge is the lack of access of finance. I think this is not something surprising because the LEDS elaboration requires a lot of time, a lot of expertise, and then a lot of money. Then you need to have some resources to elaborate it. The second one is the lack of technical capacities, I will call it like that, because we have the lack of data. Because when you want to elaborate the LEDS, you need to have data. You cannot do modeling without data. Modeling comes with data. It's the fuel that we use to model. Without that, it's very difficult. The third one is about the lack of technical capacity in most African countries to do this modeling. It's not something easy. You need to have some expertise, and it's not easy. Then when it comes to, let me go back, I think that this is the 3 main. We have also some issues with the private sector involvement. We have also issue with sectoral vision. Because when you want to set the LEDS, you have to set the sectoral vision. And most of the time, sectors don't have a lot of data to allow you to have this visioning. It's something that's challenging also. We have also the breakout of the challenges per region, as we did for the Southern Africa, Eastern Africa, and also for the Western Africa. Here, we will not see Central Africa because so far they have not submitted the LEDS. Now, we also analyze the factors that are hampering countries because we split the countries in 2. Countries that have already elaborated or are underway, we put their challenges together. And now those who have not yet started, we put also their challenges together so that we can have a better understanding of what is going on. For them also is the issue of finance, the issue of data and capacity, and the third one is the private sector involvement. They think that the fact that the private sector is not evolving is also that is happening the elaboration of the LEDS. Here also, we have the regional breakdowns to inform the regional actions. Now, we think that when you talk about challenges, you have to come with the opportunities. Because there are some opportunities, some countries have done it. It means that there are some opportunities available. And we see that all the countries, 19%, they got some fundings from some institution to elaborate the LEDS. The only country that did not receive the funding is South Africa, because they budgeted for it. They budgeted for it, and they used the national resources to elaborate the LEDS. That's why they are, because there were some budget available for the planning of the development and then they used that one just to do the two together. That's why they didn't receive. But all the other countries, they received finance, and they received resources from UNDP, from NDC Partnership for 2050 Pathways, for Alliance Française de Développement, and from FAO, GIZ, and other partners. There are some resources available. Now we think that there is also the RCC that can also come in and help to identify experts, to bring the gap when it comes to modeling. They can also help to share experience between countries. For example, Ethiopia has done its LEDS. The RCC from Eastern Africa can bring this expertise to another country. The same thing for Western Africa. I think that the RCC has to play here a key role in the development of LEDS. Also, we think that the LEDS can also inform the NDCs, because since, like Dr. George said, when we have the LEDS, we know where we are going. Then every 5 years, it's come easy to update our NDCs. It's something that can really happen. We have also this tool that we develop at Climate Analytics that is called 1.5 National Pathway Explorer. That is a tool that can help countries that are lacking data to get data on this. This is a tool, very powerful tool. My colleague Winnie is in charge of that. If you reach to her, she can better explain to you what this can help you to do. Now let me talk about some best practices. Since we are here to talk about it, we have to talk about best practices. We identify 9 best practices by reviewing the 8 LEDs available. We review the 8, and we come with some small guideline so that we can learn from the 8. So far, we find that there are 9 good practices that we can share with other countries. The first one is the political endorsement of the LEDs. We think that when you want to elaborate your LEDs, you need to do it with the other ministries, especially the line ministries. When we talk about government in Africa, we know that we are talking about the government, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Development. They are the real government. The others are just supporting. It's how we see business in Africa. Each time, then you need to have the support of the Ministry of Finance or the Ministry of Development and Planning. When you have their support, you are sure that whatever you put in the document, you have better chances to have this implemented. That is very key. When you look at the estimate of Ethiopia, I think the document is elaborated. The first ministry is the Ministry of Planning and Development. For the Gambia one, they did it together with the Ministry of Environment. They elaborated the document together. They collaborated to have this document. We think it's something that is very good to have. We highlighted this in the report. The second one is about the stakeholder participation and consultation. Today, it's obvious that when you have to elaborate a political document, you have to get the point of view of all the stakeholders. But what we are looking for here is how do you engage all them, and when do you engage them, and how? It's very necessary to come in the document with a clear picture of how you engage the people, what do they do with the document, and how are you going to engage them in the implementation. It's not just to come in and say, okay, we discuss with these people. But you have to tell us, when you look at it in the document of Ethiopia, it's very well explained in the document, how they do the sectors, how they come to the macroeconomic modeling with them, how they do this, how to do with all the stakeholders. It's very well explained in the document. The third one is about the vision. There is a debate about the vision. Do we need to set up vision for each sector and pull this together to have a national vision before developing the measures? Or do we take the measures as is now, and from that, develop a vision? Some countries believe that it's better to develop a vision, and from that vision, we can see what are the measures we need to put together to achieve this vision. Some countries, they did like that, and we think that countries like Nigeria, South Africa, and Ethiopia, they have done it very well. You can just look at what they have done and also try to follow. The fourth one is the neutrality target. How do we achieve the neutrality target? Is there a need to achieve it by 2050, or we don't know? Some countries, like when you see some countries, what they do, they take the NDCs and they say, okay, whenever the NDCs ends, we must start with the LEDs. When you look at in the Ethiopia document, I'm talking a lot about Ethiopia, but I really enjoyed this document. That's why I didn't receive anything from the government of Ethiopia. But I think they have done it well. The other point is about the adaptation. Should we include adaptation in the LEDs? There are, in some LEDs, they didn't put the adaptation, but others, they put also the adaptation as core component of the document. And we think that is something that must be done in Africa because we are more suffering about adaptation than mitigation. Then we need to have a component on adaptation in the document because at the end of the day, the people who are going to buy the document are the government and the society and the civil society. Then you need to come and talk to adaptation to them. We cannot just talk about mitigation. The sixth one is the economic modeling. This is my area of expertise. And the economic modeling, we think you cannot, or it's not advisable to have an LEDs without an economic modeling. You have to tell the government at the end of the day, what are we going to gain with these measures? At least you have to run some cost-benefit analysis to say, okay, if we are going to green our energy, what can we get in terms of jobs? What are we going to gain in terms of poverty reduction? When you do some analysis, it's become easier to sell this document to the government. Because as policymaker, what I'm looking for is the reduction of poverty and the growth. If the youth has job, I'm okay. Then you need to come with this economic modeling. And when you look at in the document of Zimbabwe and Ethiopia, they have done it. For Zimbabwe, they have done it SDG by SDG. They show what is the implication of each measures on SDGs. And at the end of the day, they came with a figure or a table to show that this will improve this at the end of the day. Then it becomes easier to discuss with the developing people. Because as economists, we don't trust too much in all this activism about it. We trust figures. When you come, you tell to the economic guy, if you invest 1 million, you get 2, he will follow you. But if you want to talk, okay, when you invest 1, this guy, no. Then we need to have these economic estimations and modeling to discuss with the government about the climate change issue and how we can take opportunity of that. The next one is the investment needs. Yes, we need to have some estimation about the cost of the document. And this was done in the document of Gambia, Ethiopia, and Zimbabwe. They have done it. You can just look at it and see how you can try to replicate it. And we have also the implementing entity and the roadmap. So far, I think Zimbabwe they have done it, but this is not compulsory. I think the next step for some LEDs can be to have some roadmap. Since the NDC is there to implement, you can have it in the, it's not so bad. I think it's something if you are doing it now, you can just put it in the document. Also, we have some lessons we learned from doing all this work that we want to share. When you are going to develop an LEDs, you have to do this with other ministries. Don't take the LEDs like the document of the Ministry of Environment, of the Ministry of the Department of Climate Change. If you take it like that, it will not work. You need to come to take together all the stakeholders, energy guys, agriculture, waste, forestry. You have to take all these guys together and ask them to plan about their future, to see what they want to achieve, so that you can together put all the visions and have a national clear vision. The second one is about the engagement of the line ministers. There's a need to put forward, if you want, it's better to tell to the guys from the Ministry of Finance and Development, that is their document. And if you need to be strategic, you put them forward and you just stay back and you allow them to elaborate their document. Then they will be more involved in the implementation of this document. It's something that you need to do. The next one is to build the capacity. Because if you want to elaborate the LEDs, the guys from the sectors, they don't know much about climate change. Those who are in the ground, they don't know much. You have to train them to let them know. I will share with you something we have done for Côte d'Ivoire. We are trying to develop the LTV for Côte d'Ivoire. And the first day we went there to have a vision. We have a section on visioning. And we came without having any training material on how to set a vision. And at the end of the day, we realized that people have just said they have something, but these are not visions. You need to come with the training materials to train them. What is climate change? What is vision? You have to explain to them so that they can do what you are expecting from them. You need to come with training materials to have what you want. The next one is about the engagement of all the society. We think that in most LDCs, LT-LEDs, we see that when it comes to the elaboration, we have some workshops, sectoral workshops, but we don't have regional workshops with the populations. It's something when we review the LT-LEDs from some countries in Latin America and Asia, they have done this. They come with together, they bring together all the sectors, but after that, they take the LT-LEDs or the vision to the regions, and they discuss with the population. We have done we try to do this in Ivory Coast, and when we were discussing with the sectors, we didn't talk about the illegal mining. But when we went to a region, the first issue of the population were about this one. They were saying, how are we going to handle this in the future? Because today we are suffering. We believe that in 20 or 50 years, all the rivers will be polluted. Then you need to put this in our LDC, in our LT-LEDs, because it's a major concern for us. But the guys in the ministries, they were not aware. Maybe they were aware, but since they are not suffering directly, they may not see this as a priority for them. It's something we think that we can learn from other parts of the world and also try to implement. The last one is about the cost-benefit analysis or the economic modeling. We think that we should definitely go for this one. It's the best way to sell our LT-LED to the government, especially the guys in charge of the management of the money, finance and development. We need to tell them because most of the time when you talk about reforestation, I'm a minister of finance, you talk about reforestation, you are asking for 1 billion. With the same billion, I can just do a road. Yes, I can do a road. And during the election time, we can go to the roads. But when you are talking about the reforestation, because we need to show that reforestation will bring much more jobs, will bring much more yield for farmers, will bring much more. Then when we come with this argument, it's more easier to discuss. Because most of the time, when it comes to budgeting, we do the cost-benefit analysis. When you go to the Ministry of Finance, when it comes to budgeting, we ask every sector to come with some budget, and we see what are we gaining from this and that, and then we cancel the issues. When we see that this one, the return is low, we just cancel it. Then we need to come with some figures to show us that, okay, whatever you are investing here, you will get the double or the triple. Then we can discuss. Then let me conclude. I think so far we managed with Agnes and the RCC, thank you so much, to reach out to 31 countries in Africa out of the 54. We think that we can do better, and we still hope that some people here can help us to reach out to some countries, especially in the northern part of the continent, Central Africa, and also eastern and southern part of the continent. We find that we have three main challenges. The financial aspect, we need to mobilize more resources to elaborate the document. We have also some technical aspects. We need to train the people. And from the training one, I think one of the best way of doing this is not to train the people in the ministries. Because when you take someone in the Ministry of Energy, you train this guy on LEAP. 6 months later, he's gone. But we can find a way of having some young guys coming from universities or lab from the university, and we train them so that they can be available at any time to support the ministry. We need to have some new ways of thinking about this technical issue to solve it, because we will not each year train the people, the staff from the ministries, because it's not your main job of doing modeling. Modeling is something that is more or less for university and some from think tanks. When it comes to there are solutions available on the continent, we have a lot of solutions. We have a lot of centers available. You have a lot of partners that can come and help. We have also some regional centers that are now available, that are willing to help. And we think that all these put together can help us to achieve the goal. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Koku, for this very rich presentation. I think that the scene is all set. We know that there are some challenges, but most of all, there are also opportunities. And we can also consider that countries have already best practices. And this is why, as the results of this study is coming from the countries, it's now the time to have also the countries sharing their experiences, because it's not a competition, but at the end of the day, it should be also a question of peer-to-peer learning. And this is why I would like, at this stage, to start to call the panel and to ask my colleague, Lawrence Mashungu, from RCC Eastern and Southern Africa, to come and facilitate this panel. But he will do that with countries. And I would like us to welcome first Ethiopia. So please, Ethiopia, come and have the floor. He will also do that with South Africa. And so we would like to welcome South Africa. And gender is slightly balanced, and that's good. But I think that Senegal will also help us to balance more this panel. Welcome, Senegal, please. We would also like to welcome Botswana. So Botswana, please. And maybe another country will join later. But so far, these are the countries taking part to the panel. So Lawrence Machungu will lead us through this panel. So Lawrence, I'll leave you the floor.
Thank you so much for this. Now we are in the panel where we are having some countries, and they are in categories as has been presented by Dr. Kuku. We have countries that have communicated the low emission development strategies, and here we have South Africa, and we have Ethiopia. So we will take some questions for South Africa and Ethiopia, and they'll answer one question. And maybe to South Africa and Ethiopia, I understand, Sandra and Director, that you have communicated the low emission development strategy to the UNFCCC. And for South Africa, I know it has been time for now, and you are possibly in the process of implementation. Maybe Ethiopia, you have just communicated it now. We may want to understand, how did you go about the process? What are the benefits so far? Because when we've been discussing with other countries, they were saying, what then is the difference between the NDC and the LEDS? What is the difference? What are the opportunities which are presented possibly in the LEDS, which are maybe not in the NDCs, and in other experiences for the same? Maybe we can start with Ethiopia, then South Africa.
Thank you very much. I'm Mansour Dase. I'm serving as the Director for Multilateral Environmental Agreements and also in charge of coordinating national climate policy and also action across sectors at national level. I'm really pleased to be here today to share Ethiopia's experience in the development of LEDS process. I'm really honored and proud that Ethiopia is one of the few developing countries who communicated its long-term low emission and climate development strategy. I just concur the word and statement made by the previous speaker, Mr. Kuku, who really helped me a lot in elaborating what Ethiopia's LTLS mean. And also he just explained about LTLS as long-term low emission and climate resilient development strategy. But most of the time, it is referred as long-term low emission strategy. For Ethiopia, it is not only about low emission strategy, but it's also climate resilient strategy. So, of course, this actually is what's the motive, especially I have to just mention here is this point is that Ethiopia developed its long-term low emission strategy because of the fact that Ethiopia really would like to be green champion at national level, at national action, and also at global level. You may well know that Ethiopia developed and launched its climate resilient green economy strategy back in COP17, well ahead of adoption of the Paris Agreement. And also Ethiopia has come up with other NDC, which is very ambitious in aligning with at least 2 degree goal of the Paris Agreement. And of course, maybe Mazara climate analytics may help me. From our point, it is aligned with 1.5 degree goal. So it is the government's aspiration to work in the addressing climate change at a longer level is a major motive to come into that one. By the way, LTLs are come inside lines with other development strategy. For example, Ethiopia developed its 10-year development strategy by 2020, and also it's updated NDC in 2021. Now LTDs are 2023. So this is done purposely to align these different climate scenarios with to align with a longer-term strategy, which our case run up to 2050. So we are aiming to become net zero by 2050 and also being climate resilient at that level. So actually the consistency, alignment, our LTDs is NDC aligned scenario. It follows that one because of the fact that we can really being implemented. I mean, we can implement those strategy, long strategy if we align our NDC with that one. So for the next NDC, our LTLs will inform the next NDC in accordance with that. So in this 10-year development plan, NDC and LTLs, we have used the same kind of methodology or modeling. For example, we used green economy model for macro level, LEAP, for example, for energy, and X-ACT for the affluent sector. So this, we just try to keep consistency in this regard in terms of modeling, and also we have well-established technical working group who are emanated from different line ministries who are responsible for just implementation of the climate change strategies. In terms of the alignment, that's the last intervention from my side. Just the basic thing we really honored in this regard is alignment of different plans and strategies to go into the same direction. And the other one is just consistency of methodology. And again, our LTLs also guide us in terms of investment requirements and also designing projects because we have used cost-benefit analysis to at least estimate the investment required to implement or translate our LTLs into action. So we have just come up with a conclusion of about 157 billion US dollar is required to implement this one. And actually we use a scientific thing, and also finally I have to say that Ethiopia, in the exercise of this development of the LTLs, we just come in reality that this developing LTLs in developing countries in Africa can bring much opportunities. For example, if we implement our LTLs, we will create about 350,000 green jobs every year. So this is a great opportunity that is not a kind of just committing much but it really bring an opportunity for development too. Our GDP will increase by 66% if we implement these LEDs. And again, we have already just paved the way to design, prioritize projects and designs, because we have already identified those sectors with possible intervention areas, including in energy, agriculture, forestry, waste, and water sector is one of our energy sector are one of the main areas of intervention. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. To Ethiopia, yeah, as per the definition, it's a development document, and there's a lot of development statistics, figures there from Ethiopia. Thank you so much for that. Sandra, South Africa.
Thank you so much, Lawrence. First, my name is Sandra Mutsanedi from South Africa. I do see on the screen that it's reflected as PEMI, but PEMI is my colleague. I am Sandra Mutsanedi from the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment. Yeah, so South Africa submitted the LEDS in 2020. And as South Africa, when we did our LEDS, we were informed by 3 guiding documents. We have our National Development Plan, which sets out the plan for South Africa's development, whilst making sure that as South Africa, we stick to our priorities of eradicating poverty and addressing inequalities. With that, we also make sure that we would, within those priorities, equitably transition to a lower carbon economy. The other document is our National Climate Change Response Policy, which sets us our framework for responding to climate change, because as South Africa, we are committed to doing our fair share to reducing GHG emissions and also adapting to climate change. As South Africa, we also have another document, which is the Climate Change Bill, which we hope it will become an act soon, which will become the legislative framework for governing climate change response in South Africa. So developing the LEDS has been very beneficial for South Africa. Prior to the LEDS, we had submitted our first NDC, and we had seen that in line with our first NDC, our emissions would probably take a peak, plateau, and decline trajectory. But as we developed our LEDS, we saw more potential to reduce GHG emissions. And as you know, South Africa has a very emissions-intensive energy sector because most of our electricity is coal-fired. So we had seen that there's a lot of potential in South Africa to reduce emissions from our energy sector. Of course, there's also potential in the industry and waste sectors in Afolu, but mostly in the energy sector. So that also prompted us to develop key policies and measures that would help us reduce emissions in the energy sector. For an example, we have the Integrated Resources Plan. We also have the Integrated Energy Plan, which kind of sets us a tone for us on how we can diversify our energy mix and eventually transition into a lower carbon economy. We also have some cross-cutting policies and measures, such as the carbon tax that taxes intensive industries. We are also working, as part of implementing the LEDS, we are also working on sectoral emission targets, where we would set targets for the major sectors, and then they would have to stay within those targets so that we could be able to meet our long-term emission goals. So those are some of the advantages that we have realized as South Africa in implementing our LEDS. And that has also helped us to update our NDC, because if you see our updated first NDC, is more ambitious than the first one. In addition, that has also contributed to us developing the Just Energy Transition Plan. And this has also been taken up at a higher level, has received a lot of high political support. The Presidential Climate Change Commission has actually been established to oversee our just energy transition. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sandra. Oh, yes. Okay, yeah, then Fatima, I think for Senegal, I know you're in the process of development, so any reflections from there?
Yes, merci Laurence. Permettez-moi de m'exprimer en français. Alors, je suis... Yes, permit me to speak in French. It's more easy for me. Alors, maybe you have a translator.
Yeah, also, it's where, yeah, yeah. So maybe Balis will start as we are getting the translation equipment. Then Balis will go first, then she will go when everyone is gotten there.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me pleasure to be amongst the panelists, particularly to be in Nairobi. And I love the city so much. This is where I grew up. So, but I'm still growing, so now I've just continued growing at home. So, colleagues, from Botswana perspective, I really envy the countries that have made submissions of this LEDS, but we as Botswana, we are not there yet. We have had a few setbacks and challenges, and one of which we have in the process of overcoming. In our case, it was the delayed formulation of the climate change structuring and not convention, but policies. Botswana ratified the convention way back, but then in 1994, but preparation of the climate change policy only initiated in the 2015s and only delivered in 2018. So you can see the time lag. I think that delay was attributed by a lot of other things, one of which may be lack of appreciation that climate change is really a development issue that it was, and that Botswana is a naturally dry country. We are almost like given up and assumed that the status quo to live with that. But now, as we progress, there was a bit of pressure coming from other supporting institutions like the World Bank and other development partners. Say for you to be able to get certain support, you need to have a policy in place. But then, and also our participation, we were able to reach out to colleagues, and thanks to our colleagues at COMESA who initiated the policy. So one of who had supported us with the policy until it was finally delivered. So now some of the challenges that I would also want to keep stressing is that, you know, when we went to Paris in 2015, that's when climate change was now quite clear, more so that we could link, and we're becoming fully aware now. And our parliamentarians and stakeholders and lobby groups, they were already coming on board to say, well, now I think the time is now to do that. But despite all that, one of the challenges that we still have at home is we still don't have a dedicated climate change implementation or coordination unit. I'm only a coordinator, but I'm based at the Department of Meteorological Services. I report to a Director of Meteorological Services. So you see, we have not institutionalized that. So it creates a bit of a problem in reaching out to the stakeholders. Like if you reach out to say the CEO of an electricity generating company, he will not ordinarily be available because he reports to another line ministry, and I'm in the environment. So you see, that institutional framework is actually what's holding us back. But our policy, which was also motivated by the need to go the low carbon way, has since identified that gap, that it had to be filled. We need to come up with a national implementing unit. So I think colleagues who already have such institutions, we will be reaching out to yourself on a benchmarking exercises or for mentoring of some sort, so that, you know, if you have done it, let's see how you have done it. Because you see, once you have a Director General of Climate Change Implementation Agency, then because you'll be able to reach out to outline his needs. And also, Botswana is a heavily carbon intense economy. And one of the challenges, just like our brothers in South Africa, we are highly carbonized, and we rely in mining. So you may just appreciate the sort of emissions that are coming from that sector. So therefore, the private sector is also quite small compared to the public sector. So which means, you know, the private sector can push you to give you those conditions that you may need to live up to with. So what has since happened with our waking up, we now have in the budgeting processes, thematic working groups that were also motivated by the policy. We have an environment thematic working group, which we chair as the department. So whenever we budget, we bring other line ministries to come to the table with us. So now I'm quite hopeful that going forward, we'll be able to even create a dedicated budget, because somebody did talk to issues of finance, but because without a dedicated unit, you cannot even have a budget. You rely on a budget of another division in government. So in our case, that's the problem. But we have since moved forward now to engage this, revitalize our National Climate Change Committee, which is multi-sectoral, getting on colleagues from other departments and private sector and academia, so that actually committed now to help us, support us in moving the right process forward. So, well, I'm quite hopeful that with those developments that we have and the awareness that is coming, and the process of revising our NDC, which is where we are, it will help us now that post the revision and submission of the second NDC, develop a low emission strategy that we envisage. We have initiated, we're engaging partners to support that, and creating institutions to help us collect the data, which is quite important, with the Central Statistics Organization to help us move to the next level. So basically, those are some of the challenges that we've been having in the country, but I'm not saying all is lost. We have moved in the right direction, but our policy strategy is going to help us move to that, because it does touch to the issues of reducing emissions from the various sectors of the economy. And last but not least, we also have been engaging colleagues from the mines who are on the issue of just transition, because they were worried about what it means to them. Initially, we were looking at the just transition as just issues of job losses and nothing else, but it has since become apparent that the need to cut emissions in those sectors is also quite important. And we are going to go all together. And hopefully, when we meet next time we meet, we'll be able to, in a position to give you a better update, to say maybe we have signed with somebody to help us develop on LEDS. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Balis. Good experiences from Botswana, and I think for other countries that have also not yet developed the LEDS, I can see South Sudan and other countries here. Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Vous êtes prêts? Are you ready?
Yes.
Alors, je suis Madame Ndiaye Fatpognon. Donc, je suis chargée de programme atténuation à la direction de l'environnement et des établissements classés. Donc, je représente le Sénégal à travers son ministère de l'Environnement, du Développement durable et de la Transition écologique. Alors, le Sénégal est en train de développer sa stratégie long terme, sa LTS, qu'elle a entamée depuis 2021. Alors, parmi les documents nationaux, le Sénégal a pris comme référence son document national de développement, qui est le plan Sénégal émergent, sa contribution déterminée au niveau national et son objectif de développement durable. Alors, l'élaboration de la LTS découle d'une nécessité et d'une dynamique de réflexion durable, inclusive et participative. Donc, il était question d'identifier une trajectoire prospective pour mettre en œuvre des trajectoires de développement durable à long terme. Donc, à partir de cela, le Sénégal a manifesté son intérêt à développer sa stratégie en collaboration avec le ministère du Pétrole et des Énergies. Alors, pour sa LTS, le Sénégal avait deux composantes. Une composante à travers un processus de concertation, c'est-à-dire l'implication des acteurs nationaux, des sectoriels, pour une meilleure appropriation, mais également pour un partage d'informations de ce qu'était la LTS, des avantages de la LTS par rapport à l'élèvement de l'ambition climatique, mais également au respect des engagements déclinés au niveau de la CDN du Sénégal. Donc le Sénégal avait également une autre composante qui était la composante à travers un processus d'analyse des données, c'est-à-dire comment faciliter la disponibilité des données pour mieux faciliter les exercices de scénarisation et de modélisation. Donc pour mettre en œuvre sa LTS, le Sénégal a mis en place un cadre de gouvernance. Et dans ce cadre de gouvernance, il y avait un comité d'orientation stratégique et qui était composé de multiples acteurs, notamment des ambassadeurs qui devaient faciliter le portage politique. Et parmi ces ambassadeurs, nous avions le secteur privé, nous avions la société civile, nous avions les acteurs territoriaux, nous avions les sectoriels. Donc, et parmi les sectoriels étaient divisés en groupes thématiques. Il faudra rappeler que le Sénégal est en train de développer sa LTS en mettant en avant la transition écologique. Et à travers la transition écologique, le Sénégal a mis en place des groupes thématiques à travers des transitions différentes, intégrant bien évidemment la transition écologique. Donc nous avions la transition écologique, nous avions la transition industrielle urbaine, nous avions la transformation des systèmes agricoles, où les ressources en eau est bien prises en compte. Nous avions la transition industrielle, mais nous avions également un groupe thématique transversal qui est nommé groupe thématique changement climatique, objectifs de développement durable, qui va prendre en compte tous les exercices qui ont été réalisés par les différentes transitions. Alors, entre-temps, le Sénégal a commencé à développer sa vision long terme, qui, au même titre que la LTS, a fait également l'objet d'une manifestation d'intérêt. Donc, pour sa vision long terme, le Sénégal avait mis en avant les mêmes documents nationaux comme référence, mais ces documents ont été beaucoup plus renforcés, parce qu'en plus du PSE et de la CDN, le Sénégal a intégré l'agenda 2063 de l'Union africaine. Il a également intégré les politiques sectorielles, l'intégration également les contributions des acteurs étatiques, mais aussi les politiques de territorialisation et les projections climatiques d'ici 2050. Alors, pour sa LTV, le Sénégal a prévu de fournir des objectifs stratégiques d'atténuation et d'adaptation, mais également une feuille de route pour opérationnaliser sa stratégie long terme qu'elle est en train de dérouler. De ce fait, comme leçon apprise, le Sénégal s'est rendu compte qu'il était beaucoup plus propice de mettre en avant sa LTV et ensuite développer sa stratégie à long terme. Donc, au cours des exercices, au cours de l'élaboration de la LTV, nous nous sommes rendus compte qu'il fallait impliquer l'avis des acteurs territoriaux dans l'élaboration de la LTS, mais aussi intégrer les aspects d'adaptation. Parce qu'au cours de l'élaboration de sa LTS, le Sénégal n'avait pas trop pris en compte les aspects d'adaptation. Donc, on a dû faire un break pour la LTS du Sénégal, mettre en avant la LTV, et maintenant, à travers la LTV, intégrer ces aspects d'adaptation, mais également l'intégration des avis des acteurs territoriaux, mais également des politiques territoriaux pour mieux redynamiser la LTS du Sénégal. Et je vous remercie.
Thank you so much. A rich experience from countries, Botswana, South Africa, Ethiopia, Senegal. So because of time, I want to give us an opportunity for only maybe one question, maybe to the panelists. I think we might want to have a question, any question that we have to the panelists, then they can respond. Is that a hand? No. Okay, there's a hand there. There are two. Okay, maybe we can ask those questions and then we have some responses.
Yes, my question is just very short. Is implementation arrangement or mechanism in place for those countries who have developed their respective LETS? If so, what are these means of implementations?
Okay. Do you have the second mic? Okay, the second question? Yes. Yes.
Thank you. My name is Tinashe. I think my question is also linked to the first colleague who asked now to say, we have been having strategies, and I can give an example of South Africa's the NDP, I think NDP 2030 or something like that, and many other strategies that have been developed. What makes us to think now that these ones are going to be implemented? And in addition to that, do we have specific action plans to aid implementation and the associated budgets to do the work? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I can see all of our panelists are writing responses. So I will give each and every one of us a minute. As you are responding, you respond to the question and also give your final word to us. So we'll start with the Senegal, the answer, the final word, Ethiopia, South Africa, Botswana, in that order. Thank you so much.
Merci pour ces questions très enrichissantes. Donc, en termes de planification, toujours en termes de leçons apprises, le Sénégal a prévu pour l'élaboration de sa LTS au niveau des activités, des exercices de scénarisation, impliquer d'abord le secteur privé pour faciliter le partage des données, mais également la planification dans les activités de scénarisation et mettre en avant également les institutions de planification. Donc cela permettra de mieux mesurer les risques, cela permettra de faciliter la mobilisation également des ressources, mais cela permettra de mettre en œuvre les objectifs stratégiques de réduction ou bien les objectifs stratégiques d'atténuation et d'adaptation, de les mettre en œuvre, mais également de faciliter la CDN. Comment faciliter la CDN? Pour sa LTS, le Sénégal a prévu comme horizon temporel 2050, mais avec des séquences 2030, 2035, 2040, pour prendre en compte les documents stratégiques qui sont en cours, notamment la CDN, notamment notre plan national de développement, pour prendre en compte ces documents, mais également intégrer ces stratégies ou bien ces initiatives qui sont déclinées dans ces documents. Donc, le Sénégal a mis en œuvre la planification et où il prévoit de mieux analyser les risques, de mieux analyser également les données, de faciliter le partage des outils et de trouver des outils propices pour faciliter les activités de scénarisation et de modélisation, mais également des outils propices pour la disponibilité également des données. Excusez-moi d'avoir été très longue. Merci.
Thank you so much. Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much for this important reflections. Just for Ethiopia, in terms of governance, we are pioneer in developing this governance structure because of our pioneer in developing the CRG strategy, climate resilient agreement strategy, which established interministerial CRG committee that comprises of two levels. That's a ministerial level that are comprises the sectors like ministries who are responsible for both greenhouse gas emission and at the same time much vulnerable to the climate change. So in using this two hierarchical structure, we can just involve those all stakeholders in any of that one. Sometimes our CRG governance structure includes also think tanks. So we do have a technical working group who have worked in development of, for example, the updated NDC, 10-year development plan, and also at the same time LTLS. So this brings us life easy, especially for me as a coordinator of that one, to bring, especially the data required from respective sectors. And also in terms of action plan, I also mentioned about the cost-benefit analysis for those intervention areas, just extrapolating from our existing climate policies and those sectoral policies that are, most of them are up to 2030, but we extrapolate up to 2050 using the model that I mentioned earlier. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So for South Africa, in terms of what has been placed in terms of making sure that we implement our LEDS, we do have high political level support. We have the Presidential Climate Change Commission, which oversees the implementation of our Just Energy Transition Plan, which is also aimed at helping us meet, our long-term emission reduction goals. Also, we do have different line ministries or departments in the case of South Africa that help us oversee the Department of LEDS. We have the Departments of Mineral Resources and Energy, which oversees the key energy policies and measures that are responsible for reducing GHG emissions. We also have the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment, which is the key department that is helping with the enacting of our climate change bill, which will be a key legislative instrument that will be used to also implement the sectoral emission targets, wherein we will make sure that the different sectors, like the energy sectors, stay within their GHG emissions limits so that we can achieve our long-term emission reduction goals. We also have the National Treasury, which is responsible for assisting South Africa to attract the relevant bilateral and multilateral financial support and other types of support to help us implement this. So in terms of the lessons, I think to develop these strategies is quite important because it does help you attract the support that you need to transition. But it's also, as mentioned, it's also important to look at your previous policies, how you've implemented them, and what were the challenges, because from there you can learn not to overcommit, because sometimes we tend to overcommit and then struggle with implementation. And it's also important that you do proper consultation with all your relevant stakeholders, because they will be the ones that would be responsible for implementation. And it's just important that as we transition, we make sure that the transition is really, really just, and that we put the people's needs first. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. See, as the last person, I'll try to be as short as they were. Like I mentioned, you see, question was, what do we have, how do we support implementation? Like I said, in Botswana, we don't have that led yet, but what I want to raise is that political buy-in and policy are very, very important in moving forward. Where I'm coming from is that in Botswana, government makes so many interventions that address climate change, and yet they are not packaged as addressing climate change. An example is we pump water. We have 2 pipelines pumping water 300 kilometers to bring it to the capital. But it was all supported through the national budget, because you see, Parliament needs awareness, and I'm very happy that there is a project to train our parliamentarians so that whenever they come up with budget allocation, they can make sure they align with the climate change, because our policy is in the process of being mainstreamed into other smaller policies. And also the other issue, we have an IRP which talks of 30% to renewables, and government has since floated 200 megawatts, and it's actually being tendered now of solar. But you see now, because the absence of a LED, this is just guided by maybe the desire to go green by the climate change policy, but not particularly being talked to as a LED. And last but not least, like I did mention, the 30% is going to come. And you also have national visions. But our national visions, they don't talk more to climate change. We have Vision 2030, Vision 2050. They're just looking at achievements that government has done since independence. But now, with our policy, we are going to make sure that we climate-proof our budget, and when we put climate change in any of those, so that interventions can be adequately packaged, and then we can have something to say. You may find, like now, government has just declared drought this year, and government is going to raise about 600 million pula from wherever. But you see, we don't call it climate change. But somehow, if you don't have policies to guide and parliamentarians not adequately trained, They'll just release money without necessarily allocating it or calling it as climate change intervention. Thank you.
Thank you so much, wonderful panelists. We got some very important interventions. So thank you for the time and the interventions we had done. Over to you, Mr. Mark. Okay.
Thank you so much. Round of applause, please. And we're going now to welcome Mr. Walter Stubia for the closing remarks. The regional leads for the RCC West and Central Africa. Walter, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you, Mark, and thank you, everyone, for staying even beyond the time. Wow. Who really says we need to always run somewhere else to find the expertise that we need to solve our own problems? I think this ACS and ACW is a good demonstration of how Africa can really get together and start finding its own solutions and implementing them, of course. We've heard, I think, and to that, one thing that we probably need to do more of is talk to each other, share our experiences better. Look at the excellent panel that we just had. Listening to Koku's expertise, I think I've just been wowed. Thank you very much. I've noted down some words, a whole government approach. So we are looking at the LEDS and the climate resilience strategies as something that shouldn't just sit within one government department. It should be shared across government. It should be owned by the entire government. And I would dare to tell you to also reach out to the private sector, because the private sector is going to bring you the solutions that you need to help you with the implementation of it. We've heard words, keywords, development, planning, finance. We've heard the creation of jobs. We've heard the increase in GDPs if you get it right. We've heard about poverty eradication. These are some words you probably want to have in mind and take along with you as you work on your LEDS and climate resilience strategy. We've also heard about the fact that we need to make sure that the LEDS and climate resilience strategy is perfectly aligned to what you already have in place. You have your development plans already. You don't want to now develop a document that goes against that. So you want to make sure that all of them are pulling you in the same direction. With those few comments from my side, I would like to then share a few words on behalf of myself and Mr. William Otieno, my friend, from leading the RCC from East and Southern Africa. We want to really sincerely thank you, Dr. George, for initiating this work and for bringing us on board. You and your team, of course. We want to thank our distinguished panelists and for the excellent contributions, for accepting to share their experiences with you. And we hope that this does not end here, that you can take their contacts, and as you go home and want to start developing your own strategies, you can be exchanging with them to make sure that you do it the right way. I want to thank my colleagues most sincerely. I'm talking about Mark Dubre and Lawrence. Thank you for your excellent contribution. And I want to thank our colleagues from Bonn, Bernd, and Saudomini, and others for their excellent leadership. They are always there to guide us as we go about this work. Climate Analytics, thank you for your excellent demonstration of professionalism and expertise. I'll just jump down to, you're probably keen to hear what will happen next, right? We've been listening to you very carefully, but I'll throw that back at you. The thing that I'll be expecting you to do is to reach out to Koku. He only covered 31 countries. We need all 54 countries to be able to understand the needs, where you're struggling. Because if we draw conclusions based on 31, we may actually be off target a bit. So please make sure that you help him to complete this study so that we can exactly see where you're struggling and target, and our partners and ourselves can re-energize and remobilize resources to see how we can help you to address this. So we've been listening to you very carefully, and over the next coming weeks or months, you'll be hearing from us about what we intend to do. We will go back now with what we've gathered from our panelists. We will go back with what we've gathered from Climate Analytics and sit down with Agnes and other colleagues, other partners, and see if we can design something that really is fit for purpose, of course, in consultation with you. So thank you very much. Please, you deserve a round of applause for yourselves. Thank you for the excellent session.
Thank you, thank you. Please, a group photo with the panelists. Can the panelists come here on the podium, please? A group and the organizers.